Dearly redheaded, we are choosing consciousness today to get through this thing called grief. Interesting word, grief. It means love, which makes for a mighty good joke. But I'm here to tell you, there's nothing else. Just joy. And if the big picture tends to bring you down, go crazy once your life goes. Woo!
Good morning. It's your natural born redhead. I'm back with Dr. Robert Stein. Bob is the, shall I say, owner of the Center for Neurobehavioral Health in Lancaster, PA?
Yes.
There you go. When Bob and I last spoke several weeks ago, we promised to come back and really talk about dementia and Alzheimer's. I had alluded to a story you shared with me. There's two stories, Bob, you wanted to share on dementia. Actually, before we go to the stories, do you just want to give an overall talk about what dementia is and isn't? I know you shared with me by a certain age, everybody has brain loss, but just give a general overview before we. Okay.
Yeah, a few things. A healthy 90-year-old person who can drive a car, take care of themselves, live independently, has probably lost about 30% of their brain due to just shrinkage. They probably have some age-related memory loss, but we would not say they have dementia.
Okay.
And that type of memory loss, that type of brain shrinkage happens gradually, and individuals, again, who are healthy and very old, make adjustments in their lives to manage that, whether it's the use of a calendar, repetitive routines, not taking on things that they can't handle, pacing themselves. But when we look at dementia, we're looking at a disease process that accelerates that decline. And while most dementias are of the Alzheimer's type, Alzheimer's disease, which is a progressive disease that causes death in 10 to 20 years or so, there are several other dementias. Lewy body dementia is another one, multi-infarct dementias, which has to do with multiple strokes or multiple TIAs over many years. TIAs are what's called mini strokes. There's frontotemporal dementias. Celebrity Bruce Willis suffering from that right now, another progressive type of dementia. Frontotemporal just refers to the area of the brain that's most affected, the frontal and temporal lobe areas. But these are disease processes, and they're slow, and they can start very early. There's a lot of biochemical work now on identifying very early on individuals likely to progress to dementia. They may not even have any symptoms. So it's believed that the very earliest signs may start in the 60s or 70s and not really show up until a person is in their 80s. If we live long enough, if we live into the hundreds, pretty much all of us will develop a dementia. But again, once you're past 100, there's so many other things that start to fail that dementia is just, again, one of many. But what really concerns people, though, is Alzheimer's dementia. It is the most common, and it's quite debilitating. As the individual declines, they develop physical and cognitive symptoms. I think the most concerning cognitive symptoms for family is when patients can no longer recognize their loved ones. And it's tough to manage. Sometimes family can feel that their loved one has already passed,
Right.
Especially when the personality disappears. Not so much the physical function, but when that recognition isn't there anymore.
Yeah. you had shared with me a story, and again, this is obviously anonymous, but I don't know if you'd call it unique, but it was a sort of different sort of dementia that a patient shared with you, where she didn't lose her short-term memory, but she lost her ability to understand her financial statements. Do you remember that story you told me?
Yeah, this is a person I'm actually still seeing. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to give the identifying information. And when I have theories on what the causes are, but none of those theories are confirmed. And this is an ongoing situation. I first met this woman about 16 years ago, and she had had a very prominent position. I won't even say what type of position in case someone's listening, but a very prominent position. And she had been retired early from that position because of dementia and psychosis. She believed that people were out to get her. She believed that people were controlling her finances. She was very suspicious of everything around her. She was removed from her independent house. She had her own house and placed in an assisted living facility. Very upset to be there. She could not manage herself. She had physical difficulties too. She walked very slowly, prone to falling. And over the next 3 years, she started to recover. And it wasn't any magical counseling that I did. I mean, we would just meet and talk, but she just started to get better. No one understood why. So over that 3-year period, she was eventually discharged from the assisted living. She went back to her house. She started gardening again. She started volunteering with the Red Cross. She started driving again. She started going to regular meetings with friends for breakfast and lunch. She attended weddings and funerals. She did all kinds of things and was, I would say, about 80 to 90% back to her old self. And things were great. And I would meet with her about twice per year just to check in. It was a very, very brief meeting. She would bring in a memo pad with all kinds of notes on it and just relate to me what she's been doing. She started to wean off various meds. She remained on a very low dose of an antipsychotic med, probably the lowest dose you can take and still have any effect at all. Wasn't having any side effects, and things were fine. Then, about a year ago, so now we're talking about 13 years later, all these symptoms start up again. Mm. And as we speak right now, she's still living in her own home, but she has about 16 hours per day of staff coverage just to kind of watch over her. And the paranoia is back, a lot of shakiness, anxiety, the walking slower. I don't believe she's as bad off as she was years ago, but it's all back. So you say, well, what is this? It's not Alzheimer's disease. It's not a typical dementia. It could be a primary psychotic condition, but again, it would be very unusual for it to be that type of condition. She never showed anything like this before the age of about 62. So in just thinking about this, two things came to mind, again, neither of which are confirmed. One could be some type of toxin that she experienced, but again, I don't believe that's it, because why would it happen 13 years ago and then happen again, or 16 years ago and then happen again 13 years later? Another possibility is an unnamed virus. Viruses are everywhere. We have all these different flus that we experience. In older people, whether it's a bacterial infection or a virus, it can make its way to the brain. And our immune systems can eventually fight them off, but they sit in our system and can attack again later. I think that's what it is with her. I'm not sure we even have the medical technology to identify whether that's true or not. Just a thought on my part. I don't even know that if she passed, if an autopsy would be able to figure that out. But something's going on with her. Her memory is impaired, not nearly as impaired as you would think with a person with a dementia. She would probably pass most memory tests, but her functional memory for day to day is definitely impaired. When she was not sick, she had a very, very intact memory and could recite minute details of what she engaged in day to day. Now she's not able to do that. So as we speak, she's kind of headed downhill again, unfortunately. And it's almost like we're just waiting it out. We're thinking, maybe this is the same thing as happened years ago. She's just going to recover from it. But that took 3 years when I first met her. And we're only kind of 1 year in on this decline. So we're just kind of watching and waiting with her. And she's 79 years old now. So it's a little bit different than when she was in her early 60s.
I bet. And I have to ask because I'm me. Trauma history? I mean, anything, any trauma, and I don't mean brain trauma, I mean emotional trauma.
Right. Nothing that I can think of. She was married and divorced. The divorce was a very amicable breakup, and they're actually still friends. She never had children. She was a professional. Chose that path. So no, nothing I can think
no
of.
Childhood shit.
No, and one of the she has I guess you'd call it a fixed delusion. She believes she has no money.
Yeah.
And she has money. I've actually had the opportunity to speak with her financial planner who manages her money for her. And yeah, there's plenty of money there. It's not an issue. And she has this absolutely persistent belief that she has zero. And you can't convince her otherwise. We've showed her bank statements and all this, and she just feels that someone's manipulating it. So that goes toward management. In other words, if you're living with someone who's delusional, you do want to not feed the delusion. And as you make efforts to challenge the delusional thinking, it usually makes the situation worse. And so where does that leave the person who's dealing with someone who's delusional? It really leaves them with doing everything you can to not engage that delusion. Does that just mean simply changing the subject? It typically means what we call a gradual redirection, not a sudden redirection, a gradual redirection of steering them gradually away from the topic. Not easy to do, but that's the attempt that you make. And when we get to my next story, the next story has a lot to do with this sort of how do you manage an individual day to day who deals with either persistent anxiety or these delusional types of behaviors.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
So if she was having that one delusion and showed a greater amount of dementia, it wouldn't be as unique, correct? It's the fact that dementia hasn't sort of dominated and something else is dominating, like you said, psychosis. So that behavior is particularly outstanding and not, I mean, within dementia, that type of behavior wouldn't be so unusual, correct?
No, right. You can have those delusions, but I think what really stands out with dementia, kind of the first symptom is that is that memory loss. Repeatedly saying the same thing, asking the same questions over and over.
Right.
That's kind of a primary symptom.
So the other story, this one I haven't heard. So
yeah, the other story, I got a call from a local Alzheimer's unit here in Lancaster, what they call memory care now. They changed the names of these things. I think just to make it sound better, but most Alzheimer's units now are called memory care. And again, it speaks to the primacy of the memory deficit as being the issue. So I get this call asking me to come consult with a woman who they say is experiencing very high anxiety, and they need her to talk to someone and get a consult and see what they can do. So okay, I'm happy to go take a look. So I head out there, and this woman is in her mid-90s, and she's living in a suite with her husband, also in his mid-90s. They both have dementia. And I go in there, very, very quiet couple. They seemed reasonably content. And the husband is there. He's sitting a few feet away, and I'm talking to the woman. And he was, not quite with it. I mean, we were having a conversation, and he was fairly tuned out. So I asked the woman if she was experiencing anxiety, and she looked at me like she really had no idea what I was talking about. And I said to her, nervousness. Do you feel nervous sometimes? So shaky? Again, nothing. All right. She just looked at me like, why are you even here? But as I'm observing her, I noticed, that there was a visible type of uneasiness that she was experiencing. So I gave up asking these sorts of questions, and I said to her, what would you like to talk about today? And she went into a long, long description of her boyfriend from 1940 and just talked about him. And of course, the husband sitting right there, the boyfriend was not the husband, and he didn't care. I mean, he was just sitting there doing whatever he was doing. And as she's talking about this boyfriend from 1940, you could just see her settling down. And she was fine. And we sat there for about a half an hour with this conversation about this boyfriend. And then I excused myself, and we ended the meeting. And I went out to the nurse's station and talked to some of the people there. And I said, well, she's experiencing these anxiety periods. I would just ask her, what she would like to discuss, and do some reminiscing with her. And if you look at memory care units in general, reminiscing has become a more common part of the programming there, if you want to call it programming.
Good.
But that's what a good memory care unit is. To give you another example of, what makes a memory care unit different from a nursing home, going back about 20 years, I consulted with a Huntington's disease unit. Huntington's is a progressive dementia. Involves a lot of motor problems, but also a lot of cognitive issues, and it kills within 20 years about. And Huntington's patients are difficult to manage because they require up to 10,000 calories per day.
Wow.
And so you have to figure out very creative ways to get food into them, and they have swallowing problems. Oh. So how in the world do you do that? And there's ways to do that too. So Huntington's units are very specialized, and it's a rare enough disease that you don't have facilities where you have more than one or two patients with this problem. So a friend of mine developed a Huntington's unit, and this unit had 30 Huntington's disease patients in it. It was a specialized unit for Huntington's, would attract people from multiple states. So I went out just to have conversations about the design of the unit. I had never designed anything like this before, so it was just I was going to make a few comments on this. And while I was there, alarms went off at least a dozen times. And these were alarms for doors that you shouldn't exit, because Huntington's patients wander a lot. So one of my recommendations, and this is commonplace now. I mean, it's just kind of a no-brainer issue now, but was not back then, is have a yard and build a fence. So that if the door opens, there's no alarm. they can just wander, but they're safe because
Right.
there's a fence. So that was a very, very simple recommendation to get those alarms to shut off, because every time the alarms went off, people got upset.
Right.
That's work, right? So there was another patient there who, whenever someone walked past his room and he saw them, he would start yelling. Well, this isn't good, right? And you can't just tell him to stop yelling. He's just too impaired. So the recommendation there was to just put his room at the end of the hall so that no one walks past his room.
I'm
Right?
sorry, I don't
And,
mean to laugh.
well, that worked. So the idea there was, and it was in the whole list of recommendations. I still have the report somewhere, but there's a whole list of recommendations that were very environmental. So the whole idea there is, what are the antecedents to this behavior? What in the environment is triggering this behavior, and what can we change in the environment to change the behavior? And so if building a fence changes it, if moving a room changes it, if certain architectural changes alter behavior, then you do that. And a lot of memory care clinics nowadays do that. They're architecturally designed to keep people content. And things like reminiscing
Huge.
is,
Huge.
yeah, it's all about quality of life, keeping things predictable, keeping things calm. You'll often see, and this is something that's, for many decades in nursing homes in general, you'll see things like, today is such and such day, it's sunny outside, this is the temperature, just anything to help with the orientation process. This is where you are, etc. But despite all that, individuals with dementia may just simply find themselves living in the past. I was once in a home of a couple. The husband had developed an early dementia. He was only in his 70s, and that is considered early dementia. And his wife told me that her husband basically thinks it's 1951. And there were many aspects of his daily life that reflected that. He didn't believe the TV was a TV. He thought it was something else. He treated the radio as something that you'd look at a radio back in the 1940s and 50s. And it was just issue after issue. He just was in denial over anything that had advanced past 1951. So initially, his wife would try to challenge this, because it's quite upsetting to watch someone experience this. But after a while, you just accept it because you want peace.
Yep.
And that's in some, if you're in the unenviable position of caregiving for someone with dementia, you just want peace. You want peace in your life and peace in their life. And so you accommodate as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, I think part of the motivation in wanting to have this discussion is I took care of my mom for 13 years. And
exactly.
it was dementia the whole time, and Alzheimer's probably the last two. But even with Alzheimer's, she didn't lose me. She lost just about everything else, but her level of care was ridiculous because she was my best friend, and that's what I did.
And the fact that she didn't lose you, I mean, there's possibilities there that it may speak to the bond that she had with you during, her whole lifetime, and that that was really going to be the last thing to go, because the bond had been so tight. So that's a possibility there. And if that had been lost, you would have perhaps questioned your ability to be a caregiver at that point.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I didn't have to think about it. But I did things. I really challenged hospice. I really challenged the caregivers because I did things. I think I have a fascination with the brain, and I had done a lot of work on neurodivergency, where being autistic was concerned, and I didn't see. I used a lot of that strategy in where my mother was concerned, if that makes sense. Just accepting what the deficits were. You had said something in our last conversation that when it's a traumatic brain injury, you make people think. And I was going to ask you if you agree when it comes to dementia, more so than Alzheimer's, although they're not too dissimilar. It's just sort of, my mother actually, once Alzheimer's hit, the anxiety went away. Alzheimer's, ironically, had some peaceful elements to it, if you could tolerate all the behavioral things.
Yeah. I think in terms of the impact on the patient, early Alzheimer's is much more troubling than later Alzheimer's because of the insight and awareness. In the early stages, you are quite aware that you're not doing well, and you're afraid because you're afraid that this is just going to get worse and worse. And you're right, it is going to get worse and worse. So there's a lot of fears there. Now those fears go away when the insight goes away,
right?
And then impact more on the caregiver than on the patient.
Yeah, I want to discuss my mom in particular because I think some of the strategies that I utilized are worth mentioning, but I didn't quite finish my thought, and it's my fault with you. So if there's a brain injury, you make them think. When it came to dementia and Alzheimer's, I would make efforts so she didn't have to think.
Yes, there's a difference for sure. With brain injury, whether it's from a gunshot or a car accident or a blow to the head, there's a rehab focus. So you're trying to accomplish two things with brain injury. There is going to be some accommodation to deficits which are generally believed to be permanent. How do we get around that? All right. But there's also going to be some remediation.
Right.
What can we stimulate? So I'll often tell people with brain injury, what do you like? What do you enjoy that challenges your mind? For some people, it might be reading. For some people, it might be music or art, crafts, some type of creative process. Whatever that is, whatever you're motivated to do it and make it a part of your regular routine. It really does have to be something that you're interested in. Otherwise, it just feels like school, and you're not going to do it.
Right. But in the case of dementia, you just take away the tasks. You take away decision making. I didn't hand my mother a menu the last several years of her life. She couldn't handle it.
Right. You take away things that are going to be challenging, right, which is not a rehab focus at all, right? What you do look for, though, especially in the early to mid stages, not in the late stages, but in the early to mid stages, is preserving things in which they have an interest and also have some capability, right?
Yep.
But one of the things that I believe led to my mother's untimely death at 79 years old was when she lost her ability to read. She was an avid reader. It was her favorite thing in the world. And when she couldn't cognitively process reading anymore, she just went downhill pretty quickly because her favorite thing had been taken away from her.
Thank you for listening and supporting Natural Born Redhead. If you follow the Bouncing Balls, please like and subscribe. If you know someone interested in sparing others grief and inciting joy, message me on Facebook or reach out via my website, Natural Born Redhead. J-Ma.